I'm Tiffany Souter, entrepreneur, wife, mom to 4 girls, and a woman figuring it out just like you. If you're tired of living a life of have to and finally ready to build a life of want to, then you're in the right place. Come on, let's go build your life of and. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Life of Ann podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Souter, and today I'm joined by Logan Montague. And this conversation came together through, I pushed out through my newsletter, hey, is anybody dealing with something that you think others could benefit from your story, where you are, and sharing kind of vulnerably where today is, and maybe I can help pull you forward or push you forward or encourage you forward. But I think there's always value in sharing our journey. So as I was prepping for this, and Logan, we'll see here where the conversation goes, but I'm calling it like the valley of the messy middle, because when we're in this season of transition, it is so unsettling. And we're oftentimes coming from a place of certainty and competency, and then we launch off into something new or what we think or whatever, and it's very unsettling. So Logan, welcome to the show, and thanks for being willing to just chat through your story a little bit.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I was telling you, I'm a little bit of an open book, so I'm kind of excited to dive in and see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Well, I think let's start kind of where you started your story when you emailed in. Was that I started an agency when I was like 25. Is that right?
Yep.
So, which is like so very similar to where my own story starts. I started an agency when I was 25. So you're much younger than I am, but let's just sort of pick up from there. I started an agency when I was 25. How did you get there? What did that look like? And then we can kind of go.
Yes. So I started a marketing agency when I was 25, and that came after I worked in corporate marketing for about 4 years. Right after college, I had what a lot of people said was a dream job. I was traveling all the time. I was going to trade shows and events. I was managing agencies. I got to really learn hands-on, like every area of marketing. So I did that. It was exhausting, to be honest. By the time I was 25, I was pretty burnt out. But then COVID came, and it was kind of at a point where I think I had known for a long time I actually probably needed to leave that company because I wanted to settle down in my life more. I wanted to have a little bit more stability and be home more and not be traveling every single week. But so COVID came, and at the time I had worked for a Swedish company. So they took all of the marketing to headquarters there just as a precaution. No one really knew what was going on. So I lost my job, and I had freelanced a little bit in college. So I kind of knew how to get clients on the side, kind of what to do. Even when I was working full time, sometimes people would reach out to me and be like, hey, would you mind, helping me with this project or whatnot? So I kind of did that. It wasn't hard, I guess, for me to jump in, and just kind of seemed like the next natural step to, hey, let me just start freelancing and kind of turn it into an agency is what happened, because I started growing really quickly. I needed to hire a team. I needed help. I couldn't keep up with all the work. So that's really kind of what I did after that. It was never really a question of let me go back and get another full-time job.
Okay, so how many years did you do that, and why aren't you still doing it and loving it?
Yes, so I did that for about, I technically still do it, I guess you could say, but I pretty much have burned it all to the ground, and I really scaled back to more so just a freelance for the past, I would say for 3 years, I had an agency, I had a team, I had full-time team members. It was a lot. I was even more burnt out than when I worked in corporate. And I just didn't know what the next steps were. I was working around the clock. I was trying to figure out, okay, again, I want the stability. I want to have time to date. I felt like I was a really independent woman, but I had no time for anything else in life. I was just working around the clock. And I loved my business. I loved my clients, but it was not sustainable. So I kind of burned that all to the ground about 2 years ago. I really scaled back, and I went back to pretty much just me. I mean, I have had for the past 2 years a assistant that helps me like 5 to 10 hours a week, but I have like 3 to 4 clients max where I can pretty much handle it myself. But the side of me that is very ambitious and wants to grow and wants a bigger business kind of gets conflicted with that sometimes of, do I want to do that? Then I also have, in that transition period, started coaching other people. I started helping other social media managers, other marketers to help them get started and get their feet wet and if they are tired of that corporate 9 to 5 job and want more of what I call like a freedom-filled life where you kind of work on your own schedule, that is what I've been helping people do also. So kind of a combination.
So let me back up. When you said I burned it all to the ground, like what does that mean? Is it like, hey, I needed to fire some clients, or I let projects finish out, I laid my team off? What does that practically look like?
Yes. So I went from about 20 clients to about 3 or 4, I guess, at the time. I just pretty much got rid of all those clients. Any clients that did not feel like they fit something that I felt I could, one, do on my own, two, was really comfortable with, kind of fit into that scope and income of what I wanted on my own, I let them go because I obviously couldn't afford to pay them anymore. Without all of that income. There wasn't enough work. So I had 2 full-time team members at the time that were W-2 employees. I let them go. And then I had, a handful of other part-time people that were working maybe like 20 hours a week. They were still on a contract basis, but I let all of them go. And even my clients that I did keep, I was kind of like, hey, your account manager's not really here anymore. It's just me. And that was an interesting thing to do.
What did it feel like to go through that process?
It was, at the time, it was really, really hard because I think I cried like every single day because, that is just not, I had built this big agency in my mind and it was what I was supposed to be doing, but I was miserable. And so it was really hard and almost felt like, are you failing because you are taking this all away? But afterwards, I would say for like the first year after that, I felt so much more free. I felt so much more relaxed. I felt like I could live my life. That's when I started dating and I met my now fiance and I'm engaged, over these past 2 years. So many good things came of it in my life that I don't think would have happened had I not done that. But it was really hard at the time. And then in the end, it ended up being really rewarding. But then that's where I kind of have felt like stuck, where I'm like, okay, now what's next? Because I have these dreams and ambitions and goals.
Can you go back to that time when you were like, I have to make a change because I have to add some things back into my life. My agency's taken. One of them I've heard you say is like starting to date. That was a key. Like I have to add this back in to feel like I don't know, just delivering on what I want for my life. What else would you say back then in those things that sort of made you feel relaxed and peaceful and like you were present again? What else would have been on your like, I have to add this back list?
I think at the time it was also a lot of even just focusing on my health. I had been really unhealthy. I had gained a ton of weight just being also at home all the time, working from home, sitting at the computer all the time that I wasn't used to. And I would make time to go to the gym when I was working a lot, but it wasn't really effective. So after I kind of let all of that go, I ended up losing like 30 pounds and just really became a happier person. I learned how to cook better and just eat better, which obviously took more time. I wasn't just ordering DoorDash or Uber Eats for my meals when I was working. I also, during that time, really wanted to add just more time with friends and family. I was traveling a lot during that time. That was the one thing I was like excited about when I started an agency. I was like, ooh, I can kind of work from anywhere in the world. But then I kept on finding myself on all these trips that I was never really enjoying. I was really just kind of working from anywhere, which was fun. But was I being in the moment with the people I wanted to be with? Not necessarily. Or I was going on a lot of trips with just work friends, which I love my work friends. I love all the women I've met from business that we can go on trips and we understand that we need to work together. But I wasn't taking the time to, if my family asked, hey, do you want to go on a long weekend trip or do you want to do this? I would say no. Or if I went on a trip with my girlfriends, they always knew, oh, Logan's going to be working for, the first few hours of the morning. She's probably going to skip breakfast or, just any downtime that we have, Logan's going to be on her computer. And they kind of got used to it, but I was not okay with that.
So a couple of things, can I just reflect back some things I'm seeing? And this is me talking as much in the mirror as I am talking at you. So please take it with that.
Yes.
So one of my observations is that the vocabulary that you used to describe your job when you were in a corporate setting for the Swedish company was very similar vocabulary to the language you used when you described the environment that came from you creating your own agency. Mm-hmm. And so potentially the learning from this is you have a belief that to be successful in your work, it requires that version of energy from Logan, where you give it all over to your work. You do the most, you're the most responsive, you work the most number of hours available, and you're quick to make those compromises of your own personal space and satisfaction and rest and exercise, because there's like, for me at least, there's like this ego trip that comes with being needed and this fast-paced environment and like just sort of this like rush of all this stuff to do. And I, for a long time, believed that for me to be successful and make as much money as I wanted to, I had to operate in that sort of like manic, unsustainable way, or I had to pick an or. I can be restful or I can be successful. But to believe that that could be an and, which is like the premise of this entire project, is that like to work to first believe that Logan can make as much money as she wants to and do it in a way that is sustainable to her is not yet something that you believe, because we solve towards what we believe. To be successful, I have to have this like sort of manic effort towards my job. How does that feel when I say that out loud?
It's definitely true. I definitely feel I have not actually correlated those together. The more of like what you said about the corporate setting and kind of in the agency setting and that belief together before. And I think that's very interesting and very insightful and very true when I hear you say it.
Well, the thing to understand is that it will follow you into whatever new environment we create. Because again, this is like at a no judgment zone. This is like, I can see these patterns because they were and sometimes sort of thread their way back into my own belief. And this is why is like when I started to realize like I didn't believe that these things could both exist together. And so I was making that true by my choices. And even going back to things like the things that you wanted to add, dating, health, time with friends, those are incredible goals to have into your life in every season, no matter what's going on. But I think what can happen is we make these things sort of big and obtuse. So when you were able to sort of clear your calendar, you did something around start dating. I don't know what those behaviors were, but like I downloaded 2 apps, I filled out a profile, I joined a Bible study, I went to a new gym. I like all, you had to do something to sort of put yourself in front of new people. Mm-hmm. But even when we're in a season where we're really busy, breaking those things that we want to make progress on down to a place where I talk about minimums. It's like, what is the minimum behavior that I can put towards this important goal without clearing out 30% of my life to make room for it? Because that's not in every season going to be a sustainable solution. Does that make sense? Let's just take maybe your environment right now. So you've still got some agency clients, you still have where you're doing consulting, you're doing some coaching. What's something that you would love to add into your life right now that your brain is telling me, I don't have time for this in my current season?
Yeah, I think something I wouldn't even say add, but something I've been struggling to even keep up with, I would say, is now I'm in, I kind of peeled back all of that stuff so I could make room for dating. I met my fiance. We're getting married. I feel I wouldn't say I'm even stressed on the wedding planning stuff. I really don't feel like it's that hard, but there's so many things that I'm like, oh, I wish I could like have more energy to put towards it, or think about the decorations, thinking about doing that stuff that I probably will be stressed later because I've just been avoiding it because I don't feel like I have every single day. I would say I make kind of my work to-do list, and then I kind of have like my life to-do list. And then I also I want to spend more time with my fiance. I feel like even lately I've been just working a lot in the evenings, and I hate that. He is so caring and understanding and he's like, no, you have to do what you have to do. He also just came off of a really busy season he's a soccer coach. So he just came home and he's like, oh, I just was, busy for the past 3 months in the evenings and whatnot. So he understands it. But that's one season for him. I don't want this to be a lifelong pattern to where I fall back into it as I've been getting more agency clients again. And I noticed that is why when you said that pattern follows you, that clicks in my mind because I'm like, okay, well, that's what I've been doing again. So now I feel like I'm not keeping up on the housework. When I was single, I lived in a small apartment. Now I live in my fiance and I have a home. Well, it's much bigger. I have more to clean. I have more to keep up with. He does most of the cooking, but I would once in a while like to feel like I can cook and be present. And I think that that's something I've been internally struggling with of how do I grow again and decide to grow and make more money and not be limited to those 2 to 3 clients while balancing this new life that I have that I want to enjoy.
Yes, such a good question. So one thing to pay attention to is life cannot be eternally additive, because this going from a single human on the planet who has 800 square feet to get clean, and now you have changed the complexity in your life where you're living with someone, you've got more square footage to keep clean, you've got more laundry to keep going. Time does not expand to fill the work available. And so you have to start making choices on, like, I'm a big fan of, as my earnings started to increase and you start to see, hey, I've got revenue that's coming in. If you took the 2 hours a week that you're spending cleaning your house and instead spent those at a billable rate of $350 an hour or $200 an hour or whatever you are, and said, what if I could pay someone once a month or twice a month to clean my house? Is the financial benefit, as you think about this as an entrepreneur, because it was the opportunity cost of my time was massive, especially when my business was little. It was like, hey, if I can spend an evening going to a networking event and coming home with a $20,000 project, that's a much better use of my time than folding laundry on the couch in that season of my life. So thinking about where can you and your fiance be thoughtful about kind of low value tasks that you can affordably outsource or work towards a place where you say, once I'm making, set your monthly salary level. Once I get here, I'm going to take $200 a month and I'm going to put that towards getting some help so that I can feel like I can keep scaling my business and not feel like it's like a penalty. It's like, this is terrible because there's more housework, more relationship stuff, and more work all coming at the exact same time. So thinking about your time, almost like I think about like trading stocks, like where would you put it so that there's a greatest amount of return? And it's not just financial return, it's relationship return. And so I started to get to the place where I'm like, all this ordinary part of life, doing laundry, cleaning my house, mowing my lawn, like all that stuff, I started outsourcing because those were low value tasks. And as I made more money, as the business grew, I was very thoughtful about taking some small percentage of my incremental earnings and putting that towards getting more help so that I could manage my relationship. Because that was one of my beliefs, was that I had to keep doing everything. As my family got bigger, as my husband's job got bigger, as our house got bigger, as our lawn got bigger, one of my beliefs was I have to do it all. And I was like, my relationships are actually better when I don't do it all. I resent my home so much less when I don't have to do everything. Like all of that created a really different energy for me as a mom and a wife, getting rid of some of that stuff. So that was the first thing. The other thing I started to think about when you say things like, I would love to have like some time where I'm cooking and it's not totally falling on him, not because I don't appreciate him cooking, but because I want to, and I want to learn that. It sounds like it's part of you activating around your goal around health, and super important to feel like you're in control and that you're learning towards something that's important. One of the things that can be helpful is taking it from the abstract, which is, I would like to do some of the cooking sometimes. That is directionally what you want, but it's still pretty implicit, like what's sometimes. And so for me, it's helpful to say, on Tuesday nights, that's going to be my night. I'm going to cook on Tuesday night. So then it's on your calendar and everything else in your life starts to push around. It like makes space for the thing that you want to do. Because my guess is if it's on your calendar, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so like Tuesday night's your night that you're done by 5:00 and your brain kind of knows that all day long because it's like, I got to be done. I've got to get this proposal done a little bit quicker. I've got to jam through these emails. I've got to get this strategy done. I've got to make this 45-minute call 30 minutes instead. Like you look for these little increments of efficiency that start to make it so that you can have time to cook dinner that night because it's on your schedule. But if it's not on there and it can be any of the nights, then you kind of get to Friday and it's like, we usually go out on Fridays and oh shoot, I didn't get it done and I'm feeling bad about that. And now I didn't really keep my commitment to myself. But because you didn't stick it on there and decide, I'm going to start with one. And for 12 weeks, I'm going to try to do once a month or once a week. And maybe you get to the place where it's like the first week of the month, you do one night. The second week of the month, you do two. The third week of the month, you do one. The fourth week of the month, you do two. Like you just incrementally move yourself towards what it is that you want more of and making it really explicit instead of it letting it be this sort of like wishy, hopefully kind of a vibe. Your brain, your problem solving brain will start to make that true.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I live by my calendar. I even, I time block my tasks throughout the day for work is how I usually plan my days. Obviously, sometimes things end up taking longer than you plan for. And then that's how I end up working later also. And I think that's also something that I've been coming to terms of reality of also is that I just can't do everything. That there has to be some give in business and in life. There has to be some give because you said we don't have more hours in the day.
One of the things that I teach and would recommend maybe you try is every week I have a planning meeting with myself. It's usually on Friday afternoons around 2:00 because all my kids get home 3 on Fridays and then it's like into the weekend. So that I found that's a good time for me. And I am planning the next week. So I put my workouts on the calendar. I figure out what our dinners are going to be for the week so that I can put my Instacart order in. I go through and look at all my kids' events, which is not something that you have right now, but maybe going through your fiance's soccer schedule.
Yeah.
Looking at what are you going to have with time with friends, what dinner you're going to cook, maybe do some research on Pinterest on like what you want to make so that that's all done. So that's like my planning meeting. So that once I get into the week, I am executing everything I planned, including looking ahead and saying, okay, I have a big presentation on Friday. I probably need to have some planning time on Monday afternoon. Tuesday is back to back meetings. I'm not going to have any time for probably administrative stuff like getting through my emails and stuff. So I need to either do that Wednesday morning early or I need to jump back on for 90. Like I get it all organized so that for the most part, I'm executing once I get into my week and the administering of it is pulled out of the day because it's like stressful to figure out what you're doing and to do it, I found. But it's not just planning your work stuff. It's also planning your personal stuff. It's planning the time you want with your fiance. And it feels so ridiculous, but it makes sure that everything you want to do actually makes its way into your calendar. So maybe something to try.
Yeah, I really like that, especially what you said too about the days that you have, on Tuesday you have back-to-back meetings that you're probably not going to get through the emails and things. I think that's a lot of the part of growth that I've also been like, if I'm just on calls all day, when does the work actually get done?
Yep.
And I like how you mentioned that maybe it's okay I don't get to them either on Tuesday and I do it first thing Wednesday morning and schedule that in. Or, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 hour after the meetings to get them done or whatever I can get through. I think that's been something I've been very hard on myself about. Well, you have to do it all. You have to do the meetings and do it. And it sometimes can't. Well, it can happen, but then everything else gets pushed to the wayside as well.
And I think paying attention to your week when you're looking at your planning meeting to say, last week, what worked, what broke? Like what just created this avalanche of stress for me? And what do I need to figure out? I struggle to implement this, but I will share it with you as advice in the event that it serves you and it's a me problem. I had a very successful CEO mentor, and he never let more than 60% of his day be scheduled with meetings. It was a rule for him because all the things that we're talking about. Otherwise, you never have time to get your work done. And he would say, as a CEO, not that he is the most important, but he should be doing the most important things for his role. And if he's in meetings, all he's doing is what other people want for his time. And so as you think about not being in meetings as being part of the way that you strategically work on growing your business, execute your client deliverables and just like paying attention to some of that I have found there is a pretty tight correlation with my ability to have restraint on what goes onto my calendar and my peacefulness and confidence in where I'm at. And when that gets way out of bounds, I just feel like I'm a wet dish rag in my own life. So something maybe you try to experiment with for a couple of weeks, or just one of those things that like you at least watch it and say, of the days that went best for me, what was kind of the mix of meetings, client meetings, business meetings, work time, and as best you can, which when you're in client services, you don't always have complete control. Try to use that as a template for kind of how you design your time. So something to think about.
Yeah, I like that.
The other thing you talked about was you're in this season of planning your wedding. And I'm in a season of we're going through a big remodel. Our family is moving. And so there is the fact that there is a defined amount of time where there is, in fact, more, which is what you're experiencing right now. Like your wedding planning is not going to persist into eternity. There's going to be a day where it's over. And so in these seasons, sometimes it's like, okay, hey, I'm going to have to work 2 more hours on Tuesday nights because this special project has to fit somewhere, which then again, it's defined, it's contained, and it gives you a place to put all of your ideas, all of the free radicals inside of your brain. For me, I have like a note on my phone where I park all this stuff that wakes me up in the middle of the night around this house project. And then I meet with my contractors on Friday for an hour. And then I generally spend an hour before or after it working on what it is that they need from me, or our moving plan, or whatever. And so that's like where I try to park all that stuff because it was chasing me around in my day. And until I had a spot on my calendar, I was like, I'm forcing this here. I have this meeting with them. That's when I'm going to get my to-dos. I'm going to try to get them done fast so that they can keep moving. Whatever phone calls I need to make, whatever follow-ups I need to do, I have that time blocked right after it so that I'm not like carrying these to-dos around. It's on Friday, then it's not till Tuesday till I call. They don't get back to me until Thursday. I've lost a whole week. Like I was starting to see like this is going to create a really big problem, and just the velocity. And it sounds like your fiance is so flexible to be like, maybe one night a week or breakfast one morning, you use that as accountability for yourself. Be like, can we sit down and talk about the wedding on Wednesday mornings before we all go through? I'm going to have some stuff I need you to review, some appointments we need to schedule together. And then I'm going to take the next 45 minutes to just get some stuff done. Like setting a trap for yourself.
Yeah. And we were doing that when we first started. It's so funny you say that. We were doing that on Sunday mornings. We were going and we were getting Starbucks and having coffee and sitting down and doing it. And then life has just gotten so busy that we've quit making that time. And I think that's when I started to feel more stressed about it again, because when we were doing that, it was very like, okay, even if we're just taking 60 to 90 minutes going through this, and a lot of it is what I'm doing, I feel like the woman has most of the say in it, but it's still nice to have that accountability factor of, hey, it's getting done. And also he, wants to be informed, and I ask for input on some things.
Yeah. Totally.
But even just appointments, we recently needed to go and get the, pick out the tuxes and different things like that. And I think having more of that plan, it is so interesting because, I live my business by a plan for the most part, or I try to, but then the life things, I kind of just like wing it. And then when you own a business, it's very hard to balance it all.
Well, it gets exhausting to feel like you're planning everywhere, because it is like, oh, Jesus, it's like all I'm doing all the time. But I was like, which suck do I want less?
Yeah.
The suck of feeling like I have to plan everything, or the suck of feeling like I'm just like being drug around my life, because it does take a lot of discipline to be like, okay, I'm going to stay on top of this. I'm going to figure out the components. I'm going to get out the calendar. I'm going to make like that inertia of getting over like this sort of unknown and getting organized, I think does take a lot of energy inertia to be like, okay, I'm on top of this. I'm clear and I know exactly what to do. And I feel confident with my plan. But it's so normal, Logan, for us to not take the same disciplines that we have in our business into our personal lives, which is where I observed my own behavior. I was like, why is it that I can scale my business? Why is it that everybody who works for me knows exactly what to do and how things work, and I have systems to do the lowest value tasks, and the right people are doing the right things. And as people get more experience in the career, they're not doing this crap at the beginning of their career. I'm like, that is not how we're running our lives in our home at all. I'm doing the same tasks I was when I was newly married with one kid. And now we have these big companies and my husband has a huge job and we have all of these children. And I was like, there's no way this is sustainable. I wouldn't run my business the same way I did when I started. So what you're experiencing is so super normal. And it's like the premise on which this whole thing was birthed for me personally. So
that's validating.
yeah. So normal. So normal. Okay. Anything else you want to talk through as it relates to that? I didn't know if we wanted to go a little bit into you saying like, I feel like there's a lot of different things I'm testing and trying professionally. I am not a career coach. I'm happy to try on my 45-year-old hat of people who've seen a lot of things and listen and see if there's anything I observe. But anything else you want to talk about on the personal space stuff before we kind of move into that?
I don't think so. I think this has been really insightful. And a lot of the things, it's things I know, but it's nice to hear it from someone else that like, hey, you're not the only one dealing with this. And you're also, it's normal. And sometimes I have some seasons where I feel like I have it all figured out. I'm like, oh, I got this going, for the past 2 years. I was like, okay, I got this personal stuff figured out. But now that I'm back in a space of wanting to grow my business again, and I have started to grow it again, it's like, wait a minute, you can't only have it figured out when your business stays stagnant.
Well, and you're getting married. Like change creates friction. It's permanent for all of us, but I think in particular women, especially if you and your fiance decide to have children, it's like, it's one thing to be like, I'm a human on the planet all by myself. That's like one version of solving and priorities. And that's like, okay, I want to step into this relationship. Amazing. Excited about this, but a different set of choices and priorities to be able to make that fit. And then there's like, I'm pregnant. That creates a different kind of, I've got appointments that I didn't have before. My body can do different things than it could do before. I've got, my self-care looks totally different. And then you're postpartum and then it's like, it all changed again. And then your kid like can walk and it all changes again. And then they go to school and it all changes again. And then you have another one and it all changes again. And so I don't say that to make you panic. I just say it to say like, when you're in these seasons of change, that's when I have to say to myself, Tiffany, you're in a season of change. So the things that worked before will not all work with where you're going. And so what's breaking? What do you need to redesign? And how do you get back to the place where you're like, yep, I'm on top of it. But I think what can happen is we start to like lose our solving confidence. And at some point we just kind of like, I'm picturing this like boulder that you just kind of let run over you. I'm 15 years older than you. And I see this in some of my peers where it's like, I've just given myself over to the crazy. I've just given myself over to the fact that I don't have time to care for myself. I've just given myself over to the guilt that I have. I've just given myself over to not dreaming. I've just given and it's like, we have to push back against that because it's these change seasons that create, like they just take a lot of solving velocity. I keep using that vocabulary, but it's like, no, but until you're like, no, I demand that this is not the way it's going to feel. I demand that it's not going to feel like I'm always behind and I'm always tired. And you saying it's not okay with me that I feel this way in my body. Those are really important moments where you just like throw your flag in the ground. You're like, I don't know what needs to happen, but this is not okay. And that is a really powerful, I think, attitude to push back at life sometimes when it's trying to take you, I don't know, not take us, but like it's hard to stay on top of it. And if you lose your fight, it's going to take it from you. So I'm proud of you for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. No, and that is so helpful too. I think that's really why I want to set these foundations now. So that way, when I do go into a new season, because, we do, God willing, want to have children one day. And I know that that's going to be a new season.
Yep.
But I think if I can have these kind of strategies and these little tweaks that I can make for different seasons and know, okay, maybe in this season, this is what I need to outsource, or this season, this is like where I'm at, and setting that foundation now, I think it will help set me up for success in the future when there's just different seasons.
100%. 100%. Okay, let's try on the conversation in your professional life and see what happens. I don't know.
All right.
Where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, right now I've been in this season of, I kind of said, I burned the agency down to the ground a couple of years ago for the most part and pretty much just went back to freelance. Although I've always still kind of called it an agency because it's still set up as, my business and all of that. But it really just me. keeping, my clients that made me be able to live very comfortably for just myself and whatnot. But I think I've always known, and I've said this on, different interviews I've done before and stuff, and even like presentations in college. I was always like, I'm going to be like the CEO one day. I didn't know it was going to be my own company, but I've always had really strong ambitions, and I don't like just kind of like the status quo. I like to, I don't even want to say like do more, but maybe I do. And maybe that's the problem. But I like having work that fulfills me. And I think having a business does that because it gets to be different a lot. I get really bored in doing the same things over and over again. I think that's why in corporate it was like, it was different, but it was also, I wanted to be having the opportunities. And I like with client work, when you get a new proposal or you get a new client, it's a different kind of business. It's different things. You get to do a lot of different projects. But in that growth period, it does get really messy because it's like, okay, well, when do you hire? And I think before I hired maybe too soon and was outsourcing stuff too soon, but I was also, for my own mental sanity, kind of needed it. And then financially, that didn't really work out. And so now that I've taken these 2 years to reset and I've been thinking about growing my agency again or growing the coaching program or growing a business just in general, I know that I'm never going to be able to do it all, but it's a hard place to grow. I think there really is kind of a messy middle in business where you're like, what is the next step? How do I, and maybe it is part of like, okay, outsourcing some of the life things. So that way I'm not ready to outsource some of the business stuff yet. But figuring that out has been a bit of a challenge, to be honest, as I like kind of figure out the right direction and the right people and the right everything.
A couple of things that just came forward for me as you were chatting. I think I'm in the very similar season with this Life of And project and figuring out what can it become and what could it become with like what the market would accept and what can it become based on what I want to give it in this season of my life. And so I was hearing you say things like, I need variety. Let me tell you what I'm leading you towards, and then I'll talk you through some of the bullet points I'm hearing in your own story. Getting to the place where you have identified your goals and your boundaries. Those together is your sandbox of solving. So I think in the past, you've done a good job of defining your goals. Like, I wanted to grow. I want to be CEO. I want to sort of feel leadership and empowered and have variety, all these kinds of things. Those are goals. But not having clearly defined your boundaries makes sort of the possible anything. And that's what starts to make its way into your life, is anything and everything, because you don't know what to say yes and to say no to because you haven't clearly defined your boundaries. And so other people aren't going to create those for you. And so there are none. And so you do achieve your goals, but it's at the consequence of your boundaries. And then that feels super crappy. So I think as you're going into this next season, it is about defining your goals, like how much money you want to earn, if it's a title that's important to you, or feeling a sense of leadership or growth, like whatever. And I heard you say like achievement. Like, I am an achievement junkie. Give me an award and a stage to walk across, and baby girl will work her face off to get it. It's silly. So stupid. It does nothing for planet Earth or for anything else. But I love the feeling of winning. I love the feeling of striving. And it's just part of who I am. And you have that in you too. It's like you want to feel like you're winning something. Mm-hmm. And that's serving you very well and gets you through lots of hard seasons in life. So I think it's that, figuring out your goals and figuring out your non-negotiables, those things that are like, hey, these are the boundaries that I have to put in place for that to be able to be true. And it's things like, I have to still have the space for X number of workouts a week. I need to have the space to eat healthy, which looks like food prep on Sundays and making dinner on Tuesday. Like, very specifically, what does it mean to have these boundaries in my life, and how then it's on your calendar. And if somebody says, would you like to join a board that meets every Tuesday night from 4 to 8 p.m.? You're like, I'm sorry, it's a no. That violates one of my boundaries. Tuesday night is here's what I do. My time is already spoken for, which is totally different than your calendar being sort of a perpetual free-for-all, and you don't know what to say yes and to say no to. So in my Life of And world, I'm trying to figure out things like, I love to do speaking and I'm good at it. It requires travel if I'm going to do that in person. So what's the maximum number of nights I'm willing to be away? from my family what will work for the girls in this season. Is it the same in every season? Or is it like, I don't travel in the fall because it's volleyball season? Like just trying to sort of ask these questions of my calendar, because I have to both scale this project and feel great about the effort and energy and availability I have as a mom in the season. It's happening on the exact same highway. And so my brain wants to be like, which one do you need to quit? It's like, no, what are my goals and what are my boundaries? And then my brain starts to solve inside of those boundaries. It's like, how many virtual presentations could I do? I don't know, probably 100. So many. Like I could do 2 a week, no problem. That would be no effort. Okay, I've got to figure out how to sell that. I've got to figure out how to package it. Does that make sense? Like my brain starts to go into a totally different solving mode. Or if I do 20 in-person talks, that's probably 40 days away. That's over a month. That's a lot. It's probably too much for my family. 20 feels less than 100, but I bet selling 100 if I got, does that make sense? Like,
yeah. There's different solutions for different things. Sometimes I think of things as like all or nothing. I'm like, oh, well, I have to attend this event, or I have to do this, and I need to do all of these different things that ends up taking away from my boundaries. But I'm like, well, I can't say no when I could. And what if there's a different solution?
Yes. And this is one of the things I've trained my mind to believe. That opportunity will always be available to you. That opportunity will always be available to you, because we go into this like scarcity mindset where it's like, if I don't say yes to this board, I'll never be asked to one in my whole life. If I don't say yes to this speaking engagement, nobody will ever ask me again. If I don't say yes to this client, no referral will ever call. Like we sort of like, we catastrophize it in our head. And if you tell yourself this opportunity will always be available to me, is now the right time for this? Does it fit my goals and does it fit my boundaries?
That's good. That's really good.
Because I was like the same way. It's like, when I was young and growing my agency, people would ask me to speak, and it was very distracting. All these boards that I was asked to be on, the speaking that I was asked, it was very distracting from the thing I was building, the people I was leading, and my young, fragile company. It was very distracting, but it fed my ego like crazy. And I started to realize we are not making the progress in the business that we need to, because I'm doing all these other things. But I'm afraid my older self will not have these opportunities. I can tell you at 45, I have those same opportunities. And so I'm like, tell myself even today, some of these things I'm being asked to do will always be like writing. People are like, you should write a book. I mean, maybe, but this is not the season for me to write a book. I have 4 kids still at home. There's so much going on. That was not the season. That opportunity will always be available to me. Now, that might not be true, but I'm pretty sure it is. You know what I mean? And most of the things, that opportunity will always be available to me. Is right now the time? And does it fit into my goals? And does it respect the boundaries that I've put in place? So
that is so good. That really just reframed my perspective on that a lot, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, I think as you look at all these other things that you're testing and trying, looking at the things I heard was, I need variety. That seems to be very important to you. Some type of achievement, leadership, like your younger heart saying, I want to be the CEO. I think that's a really important clue. But like really asking yourself, what do I mean by that when I say it? Is that I want to be perceived as important? Do I want to be a leader? Do I want achievement? Do I want the financial piece of that? Do you want all of it? None of those answers are good or bad. They're all just your answer. Like, why? Well, it helps you kind of know what to protect. And then I heard, as you were growing the agency, again, such a common thing that happens where it's like, I'm growing, I hired people too soon, it ate all my profit. Now all the risk and work that I'm doing is not even worth it. Like 100% have been through that merry-go-round as well. And so you're saying like, I have to sustain X level of profit or X billable rate, no matter what I'm doing, starts to help you also say no to projects that dilute your hourly rate, to coaching clients that aren't ready to pay. Like you picking that number and managing to it will start to create that world for you. But if you never decide what the minimum is, all kinds of things will find you.
Yeah, I think that is very insightful as well, because so many times I think we're like, oh, well, is that, in kind of what you were just saying, the opportunity will always be there, is that you get in this kind of scarcity mindset, like they're not really at the rate I want them at, but I'm going to take them on anyway. And then it's just this really bad cycle. And I think really just go back to protecting those boundaries of if it's not going to serve me, it's okay to say no.
Totally. And my sales coach told me 1,000 times over, how hard are you selling when you don't have work to do? So hard.
Yeah.
When you have a bunch of work that you're working on that is not paying you your rate, how hard are you selling?
Not much.
No. You're a slave to that work.
Yeah.
And so you remove the pain and urgency artificially from your life when you're working on work that is not paying you well, versus being like, yo, the cliff is coming. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to bust my butt and I'm going to find work that's going to pay me. You put those hours towards finding the right work. And then those people tend to know more of the right people. It starts to then work, but you have to sort of have the guts and the courage. And I would, like, when I was in the agency, I would be like, okay, 10 years ago, I was like, I'm not taking on a project that's less than $20,000. And I would like hold that number for a year. And then I would get to the end and see how we did. And I'd be like, okay, next year, we're not doing a project under 35 grand. And people would ask me, what kind of work that you do? I'd be like, this is the kind of work we do. We really don't take on anything under $35,000. And here's the reason why. And the number just kept getting bigger. And now it's like, if you have less than 250 grand, we really can't touch it. But it started with me just like incrementally picking a spot and realizing, just turning on the engine, setting them up as a new client, sending out invoices, having a kickoff call, like all the stuff that it took to onboard a new client. We couldn't do that for $5,000. I couldn't touch it for $1,200. Like we just couldn't do it. And so I stopped competing with solopreneurs and started to realize, like, I've got to get myself out of that world and start competing with other agencies. And it's kind of how we ratcheted up who we were competing with, because I just started to say, they're like, well, this person will be. I was like, yeah, we don't really compete with them anymore. This is kind of who it is. And it made me get better at selling, because there's just fewer, not fewer at bats. I just found where those opportunities were, and they weren't necessarily where I was hanging out before.
Yeah. Well, and you just said something that really just stuck with me is you said you quit competing with solopreneurs. And I think that that's when I built my agency before. I went from solopreneur to agency, but I was still operating at a solopreneur level. And so that's where this time what I've kind of been like testing and seeing what's working, I've been like, okay, well, I know I can't do that, but what does that look like? And I haven't set that baseline of what you've been saying about, well, no, if it's not at this level for this project, then I'm going to say no, because it really just does not work to take on things at a lesser rate, because there's just too much, and then it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm, totally. And even today, like in my speaking and stuff, I'm really learning, like, what will people pay for different things. And my, I don't know, like little mental rule is I'll pick a price, and if I get 5 no's at that price, then I might be too high. And I will adjust it like down by, I don't know, $1,500 or something. Just like, see, was that the problem? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I just don't know how to get to the right pain. But like, that's kind of a clue for me. If it's just like, okay, I've gotten 5 no's. I think it's, pricing seems to be the reason. Like, it kind of gives me a clue.
Yeah.
And then conversely, if I close 5 in a row at that price, it's sometimes a clue that I can ratchet it up and sort of start to get to the place where I'm like, kind of getting into the next stratosphere. So it's not scientific, but it gives me something to watch for, because otherwise, like the first no, you're kind of like, eek, I guess I'll change it.
Right.
But it's like getting 5 reps in. It's like, I usually ask better questions. I can build, a little bit more like understanding of my, capabilities. Like, it just kind of gives you some reps to kind of see what's happening. So it's a little thing I use in my brain that's not scientific. Just helps.
Yeah, but I like that, because it's just really just from everything you've kind of told me, it's just having another system of like, that's how you kind of like gauge things. And those systems are the things that really help you protect your boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I think for a long time, I've always heard people talk about boundaries. But I was like, what does that really even mean? I think for me, I don't think I've ever actually really identified. I mean, I think I've identified some boundaries, but what does this really mean? What does that really look like? And I don't think I've ever taken it that next step further and implemented those kinds of systems. I love systems in my business. Like I said, I love my calendar. I love project management tools. I love all of those things. But these are these other kind of like little systems that I think make a big difference.
Totally. And allow you to have really explicit conversations with your fiance on like, this is the space I need to take care of me. This is the space I need to take care of our home. This is the space I need to take care of us. Like it starts to make it really clear. I think one of the most weaponized things that we can say to our partner is, I need more me time. It's like, I have literally no idea what to do for you.
Yeah.
I leave you alone, book you a spa appointment. You need your nails done. You need a back rub. You need to walk outside. You need to read a book, like a bath. Like I have literally no idea what to do for you. What do you mean? And you probably have no idea what you need done for you either. And so it becomes this like kind of ridiculous thing that goes back and forth of I need more me time. But when we make it really explicit and really define what that is that makes us stay, for the most part, completely fed and whole individually, then we can help gift that to one another. So if it's, for me, it's 3 workouts a week for 30 minutes at home. My husband can gift that to me by saying, hey, it's Friday and you haven't gotten your 3rd workout in. Why don't I watch the kids for 30 minutes? So he gifted me my me time, and I knew exactly what to ask for, and he knew exactly what to give me. Totally different kind of relationship than me getting pissed at the end of the week because I'm tired and I feel overwhelmed and just sort of stomping off and saying I need more alone time or more me time. And we're both looking at each other like, I have no idea. I haven't done the work to define it and you have no idea how to give it to me. And so here we are just being mad at each other. So
yeah, that's so good.
Awesome, Logan. Well, anything else you want to cover before I'll ask you maybe to summarize. You did this a little bit already, but like kind of what you heard and what some of your breakthroughs were.
Yeah, I think that, oh my gosh, this was so good. So much. I think really what I am hearing and learning is, one, understanding what my beliefs are and the beliefs that I've had and the patterns in those beliefs and how I can change those and that they get to be changed. They don't have to be that way forever. We can do things differently, I think is the first thing. And then really the second thing for me is figuring out different strategies for different areas of my life and different plans and different systems that I can go back to as kind of those thresholds or as the kind of like baseline of this is what I need in order to feel like I'm not a zombie and not overworked and not burned out. It's really, in my life areas and then in my business areas. And at what point, can those change in different seasons, and also understanding the different seasons that we go through. And I think really having those foundations and those kind of just like a toolkit almost. I feel like you just gave me a toolkit. That's what I actually feel like, is you just gave me a toolkit to pull from in different seasons of life that I go through, different seasons of business, and always kind of go back to those foundations and then tweak them based off of what season I'm in. And I think that's really, really going to be very helpful for me.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited for this next season in your life. You are in a season of change. We kind of called it the messy middle at the beginning of the conversation. And that's what the Life of Ann framework is all about. It is about saying we are going to be perpetually solving through change and into the future. And so love that it came through that way, Logan. Thanks for just so vulnerably sitting in this conversation with me. And I told her at the beginning, I was like, we're just going to push record. We'll see where this goes. So thanks for trusting the process. And I'm excited for what's next for you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Life of Ann. This is your weekly reminder to keep making bold choices, saying clear yeses, and holding space for what matters most. As always, if you like this episode, I'd love for you to drop a review and share it with your friend. It's the fastest way that we can grow the show. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time.